Globalization has had an influence on our way of life since man started to expand its reach at the beginning of time. It's had impacts on cultures, languages, economies, and much more. In Europe particularly, trade and commerce, tourism and migration, and financial manipulation have been a large part of creating today's Western world. Here, we'll go over a very brief overview of three of the main outcomes of globalization and how they've made an impact on the economies of three cities in Europe: Barcelona, Spain, Cologne, Germany, and Dijon, France. People have been trading goods and ideas since the dawn of time. In Europe, there's plenty of evidence of early trade. Intricate man-made canals in Amsterdam and Zurich, ports on every major coastline, and blurred and blended cultural lines. Barcelona holds the largest seaport in Catalonia, and therefore one of the largest in Spain. This is especially important because of Spain's lack of natural resources. They rely heavily on what can be brought into the country through the port at Barcelona. The Rhine River, which runs from the North Sea at Amsterdam through Cologne and ends at Basel, also provides a reliable method for transporting goods to Germany and most of its neighbors. As the home of Johann Maria Farina, Cologne holds the honor of being the birthplace of the original 4711 Eau de Cologne. Germany is also largely an automobile manufacturing country, and there's a small concentration of car factories in Cologne. Cologne was actually the birthplace of the famous auto brand Audi in 1899. Today, they lead the world in innovative automobile manufacturing, and their vehicles can be found in every corner of the world. For example, Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz, both German brands, are extremely popular in other European countries. As a matter of fact, 3 of the top 10 most driven cars around the world are Volkswagens. France was the 6th largest exporter and 5th largest importer of manufactured goods in the world in 2010, according to the WTO. Dijon provides a lot of authentic goods to its neighbors: French cheeses, Burgundy wines, and the original Dijon mustard, just to name a few. Dijon mustard is very common in many parts of the world. Many Americans have actually never heard of Dijon except as the mustard. Burgundy wine is one of the largest industries of France, and Dijon's closely neighboring towns, such as Beaune, offer some of the world's finest wines. The Burgundy wine region doesn't only offer extravagant wines for export. Its vast and beautiful vineyards also draw in a great amount of tourists. Tourism in Dijon also derives from the name it shares with its famous mustard and from spillover from Paris tourists. However, this is not enough to keep up with its competitors. Dijon does not get nearly as many tourists as Barcelona or Cologne, and especially not Paris. As a matter of fact, Paris is the #1 most visited city by tourists in the world, contributing to France's standing as the most visited country in the world and the country with the 3rd largest income in the world from tourism. This would not be possible without globalization. Barcelona also has had a large influx of tourists as of late. Spain is the 3rd largest country in the world for tourism, behind France of course, and Barcelona in particular is the 4th most visited city in Europe from international visitors, contributing about 14% of its GDP. This increase in tourism stems from a few factors. Chronologically first, the construction of La Sagrada Familia Church began in the year 1882. Today, it rests, still incomplete, in the center of Barcelona. It draws millions of viewers every year, people coming to respect its religious and architectural contents in awe. Another large draw of tourism is the FC Barcelona Stadium. FC Barca has fans all over the world, and thousands of people every year pay for a behind-the-scenes look at the team's dressing room and a view from the box seats. The final, and probably most important factor, is the Olympic Games of 1992. Over $11 billion was spent on Barcelona for infrastructural and aesthetic improvements, and many would say that the government put the money to good use. They created beaches on the coasts, opened roadways, and added housing for the 17,000 athletes and coaches that later became vacant for locals to inhabit. From the publicity that the Olympics brought, Barcelona was given the persona of a beautiful, sunny beach city with a fantastic nightlife, and this reputation continues to draw in millions of tourists. In fact, tourism boomed from 1.7 million visitors in 1990 to a whopping 7.4 only 22 years later. Cologne doesn't have nearly as much of an influence from tourism as Barcelona, but among German cities it's ranked in the top 10. Founded by Romans, Cologne is one of Germany's oldest cities. The Cathedral of Cologne, the centerpiece of the city, attracts thousands of tourists, along with the original Eau de Cologne shop. Many tourists can also be found visiting and taking cruises along the majestic Rhine River. The creation of the European Union didn't just open up travel across member states. It also inevitably brought with it the euro and all of its pros and cons. When Spain adopted the euro in 1999, it was forced, along with everyone else, to adjust its interest rates to meet that of its partner countries. Spain's global lenders therefore saw less risk in them than there actually was, and Spain overborrowed. Eventually, they were left with an enormous trade deficit, meaning they were importing more than they were exporting. Under normal circumstances, Spain would have dropped the value of their currency to increase exports and reduce this deficit. However, this was not an option because they were tied to the euro and had diminished all control of their currency to the European Central Bank. Instead, they had to get creative. They reached their goals eventually, but it was far harder than it would have been had they been in control of their own currency. Germany has long been a global superpower, holding the largest and strongest economy in Western Europe. Smart economic, monetary, and fiscal policy has helped Germany become a global force to be reckoned with. Since joining the EU and adopting the euro, however, Germany can no longer adjust its interest rates and value of currency like it used to. Now, Germany has to be far more concerned with the actions of its neighbors, since everything they do has a direct impact on the German economy. When other European states went into extreme debt, Germany was forced to step in and bail out its neighbors. France's economic history is complex, but many experts claim that the lion's share of its current economic problems can be traced back to some of its socialist policies, such as its extreme spending on social benefit programs. The French government has been spending more on these social benefit programs than it can afford, nearly 30% of its GDP, approximately twice as much as the US in 2011. France's inability to pay off foreign debts has brought tension to the region, as some of its neighbors, including Germany, have had to bail them out. With the creation of the EU, France has gained new partners with no choice but to give them help because if they didn't, these partners would feel the repercussion of France's actions in their own economies. Globalization has touched nearly every corner of the world, but especially the West. We need to find the balance: imports versus exports, lending versus borrowing, etc. As we've seen in the past, especially with the 2007-2008 crisis, we need to remember that everything we do has impacts all across the world due to globalization.